Welcome back to Straight Talk. If you're just tuning in now, we've been discussing proposed amendments. The Kahnawake election law is going to enter into the community decision-making process, and we have with us in studio Trina Daibo and Jeffrey Daibo, who are technicians for the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, who have been working on this particular file. In terms of the recommendations that it came down, there were a number of recommendations. We've got 6 pages so far of recommendations that came, and a large part of those, Jeffrey mentioned in the previous segment, that one of the recommendations made by Alana Goodleaf, but a lot of the recommendations were made by previous electoral officers. So there's Laurie Jacobs, who was the last one, Angus Almontour, who's also part of the working group, and so on. You know what, if we could talk about some of the specific recommendations that were made, I think it might be useful. Also, one of the big questions that I have, and maybe that's the one we'll start with, because one of the things I know I was thinking about listening to the conversation in the last segment is, okay, but when is this all going to get down to being done? I mean, there's some other things that have impact on some of the recommendation, and how is that all going to play? Is this going to happen at all before the next election?
Probably not. I mean, that's an extremely tight time frame, and I don't anticipate accomplishing anything before the next elections. I asked about the process for selecting or finding an electoral officer, and I was told that begins as early as March. So some of the recommendations are in relation to the electoral officer or the position more specifically. So to assume that we might be able to accomplish something before the next elections is highly unlikely.
Let me ask another follow-up question, Jeffrey. Trina, feel free also. But just a follow-up to that, though, is a process takes time. I understand that. And I think most people in the community would kind of understand that. And yet, I know that a number of the recommendations almost following immediately on the heels of the last election, which is now almost 3 years past. When did this actually, the irons on this actually go into the fire?
Well, when
did the work start?
Lori handed she submitted her amendments in 2007, before the process was actually up and running. So it's been sitting there for a while. It's been in the hopper for a while. Mm-hmm. But it's up to the internal team to develop the communications plan, because really there is no set priority lineup for the CDMP process. It's whenever you're ready, you go. Okay,
so it's not like you deal with one and then you start the other.
Mm-hmm. So I'm a little opposite of Jeff. I'm a little more optimistic. I mean, if the CDMP is ready to set a hearing in January, I'm just being optimistic. Mm-hmm. We're ready to go. Mm-hmm. And it's up to the community.
If the community is motivated and ready to go, and if they really push it, they wanted to push it through, it will happen, right?
It will happen.
No, you're wrong on both counts, because the LCC is the driver for the process. So they schedule in the laws that are, and right now they have a list of laws that are waiting. So we know the justice went, we know membership went, okay, and then we're on the list behind membership. So some of the discussion that's occurring right now is whether or not elections should go before membership, because there's some tie between the two.
Mm-hmm. Well, specifically recommendations about harmonizing the electoral law to the membership law, in terms of the blood quantum.
So in relation to those statements, though, I mean, we're not in control of the process. When they schedule us to go to the CDMP, so we're bound by their schedule. We don't predetermine the schedule. And
but let me ask you then, since you brought it up, because that was on my mind, one of the ones I wanted to talk about, is where is the membership thing in terms of the process now?
Well, they went through their communications. If you recall, Rodney was the registrar, I think. And he did the communications with the community and information dissemination, whatever they did they had a questionnaire. He was on the TV. He had his meetings at the police station. But shortly after that, he left the position, or whatever happened, he was no longer there. So they were going through a process of finding a replacement, and they recently have, I guess as everybody may know, Roseanne Morse is now the new replacement. So I'm just assuming that one of their priority steps is going to be to gear up and continue the process. But it's an assumption on my part because I'm not in membership.
And I want to just add that, we can't assume that the community is going to want to have that change. It's going to be up to the community again, and I keep stressing that, is that it can't be predetermined. The community may still want 50%, or they'll change it to something else, and that may not be the membership law. We can't. Membership is like an issue that we don't know if will ever get solved.
I'm definitely not going to argue that point.
So we can't, we can't wait on every decision based on that.
Yeah, no,
But that's just my opinion as well. I'd like to clarify that.
But just very quickly, just to reiterate, we don't determine the process. We're subject to it as working on the content. So that's LCC that decides, and they already have a list of laws in a categorical order. And secondly, with regard to your opening statement about Alana had, or from the executive director's office, there was a work group that was put together in order to assist the electoral officer. And her report from that work group submitted certain recommendations as well. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't from Alana specifically, it was from the work group.
And that's all in here. Mm-hmm. And you even have it listed where they actually came from.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking through them. A lot of them has to do with, like the alcohol, don't selling during voting times. But a lot of them are just like terms and different, like remove this and change it to that. So a lot of like little things like that.
A lot of process.
Yeah, a lot of process. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but there are bigger ones. For instance, one of the recommendations in here is to remove the responsibility from council, from within council, and set it out on its own in the community. Mm-hmm. So that's a major one there, So
anyway, so we want to take time to thank Jeffrey and Trina for coming in, and sharing the work that you're doing and the information that you're disseminating to the community through this particular format. Which, by the way, we don't really actually often do. But, so thank you for coming. Mm-hmm. And by way of saying that, also, this process, as it plays out, of course, we'd like to have you come back in at the next sort of appropriate juncture of time to see where things are at. And again, if questions come up, we'll talk about those things as well. Yeah. So thank you, Trina. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us.
You guys shined.
Thank you.
All right, so what we're going to do right now is we'll go to commercial, but we will be right back with some more Straight Talk.